welcome to the season 1 finale of Let's Talk with Greg and Thomas. How's it going, Thomas?
It's alright, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's a little warm for my liking, but...
I know, climate change. What do you gotta do? What can you do? Support a Green New Deal. That's what you can do. We are ending this season with the discussion on landlords. So I just recently moved. This is my new room. I really like it. It's actually one of the best places I've lived in so far, and yay! That's why my bed's a mess. I just moved. Okay, don't judge.
Yeah.
How's your new living situation?
Yeah, it's I've just moved also, and it's a lot better than where I was before. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I mean, that's all we can really hope for.
Mm-hmm.
But we've both had very interesting stories when it comes to landlords. Because one, they shouldn't exist, and two, if you're a landlord, fuck you. That's all I can really say. Okay, so before I give my take on landlords, I want to hear yours.
Well, yeah, I've sort of mixed experience because I've had it here in America and I've also had it in my home country of the UK.
Oh my god! Oh, well, yeah. Give us that. What's the difference?
A little bit different. I actually will say that the common theme I'm seeing is when it comes to getting stuff fixed, or I don't know, just fair maintenance on properties. There seems to be a common theme happening in terms of everywhere that I've ever had a landlord or been at. I've been at student accommodation, I've been at apartments, I've been in houses. So it's all the same. Same running theme across the board. That's something I will say that's very similar.
Cool.
I will say here though, the biggest difference here is the fact that things like a credit score can affect whether you get a house.
Oh, so
here.
that's not the case.
It's not really a thing in the UK.
What about income? Because sometimes they're you have to have 3 times the income for this place.
Not well. From my own personal experience, I never had that in the UK. There may very well be places particularly like London, for example, where it is a lot more expensive. There probably is some form of income-based requirement, or maybe it's not a law. Maybe it's like a preferential requirement. I don't think it's a law in the UK.
Oh, okay.
That's really things like credit score, things like I'm trying to think of a few other things here. Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is the fact that you can just say no to someone based on a make-believe number. Credit reports, the credit system should not exist in my mind, but for some reason America is enshrined this as the way to go about everyday life here in America.
Also, just blatantly, I've had it where they were just difficult assholes that I was living with.
Yeah.
And I've also had it where you're kind of breaking the law.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I've been on my own since 2018. It's been 4 years now, and I've had 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my 5th landlord. Okay. So my first one, he was pretty chill. Although it kind of displaced me because he ended up having to move, and so at first he was going to sell the house, but then that wasn't going to be the case anymore. But then I moved in with my best friend. Her mom was the landlady.
Yeah.
However, she's currently renting rooms in our house when she doesn't own the house.
Okay.
She's renting that house. And so that's actually against the law here in California. You can't do that. You can't sublet without your landlord's permission.
Right.
So there was that. and she tried to make it like I was a guest in her own home. Like, I was walking on eggshells the entire 6 months I was there. Yeah. And then I moved back to the house where I first lived in, but it was under property management.
Right.
They were pretty chill. It was a little expensive when it went under the property management. A lot more expensive. I wanted to get a cat for the longest time, especially for like an ESA. And guys, I'm gonna give you a quick 2-second thing on how to get an ESA if you need one or want to register your pet as one. You can go on any ESA website. I will link one for California residents in the description below. It's usually about $40 to $50 per pet, and once you get a letter, you can use that for housing. Your landlords are supposed to accommodate this, unless if someone has an allergy. That's the only time.
Yeah. And
they have to provide documentation. Like, no, my doctor says I'm allergic. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, please know that, okay? Because I have ESAs. And after I moved out of that house, I moved to another house. And I ended up having to move recently from that house because the landlord didn't want a landlord anymore and just sold the house.
I've experienced that.
Yeah. And that displaced not just me, but like 7 other people. They're still currently going through that process right now. I was like, I jumped ship when I could, you know. And he put the house on the market before he was supposed to. You're supposed to do 120 days after letting your tenants know. He did not do that. And then we had like out of the blue open houses without like any notice, and like literally he left us in the dark about the entire process. Yeah.
Well, I'm going through something right now with my old landlord. I'll disclose any information on here because it's still ongoing. But I will say the biggest difference I'm seeing from my time in the UK to here is just the most blatant, just not even abiding by basic rules is a very common theme I'm seeing from a lot of people that I've talked to here, including it seems like a general running theme that's happening. And I think as an overall perspective, COVID has really heightened these issues, particularly around just like not wanting an open house is somehow a real issue. And you would think it would be a particular issue considering we're still in effectively a pandemic. And there's no accountability whatsoever when it comes to things like that. And that's like the bare minimum. I'm not even talking about like not getting evicted in a moratorium, even though people were still getting evicted during a moratorium. They were finding ways around it. And like you said before, the very start of this video, I think this particular what's happening with COVID has enlightened the fact that this shouldn't exist. Like, housing is a human right. I think having someone be able to I mean, it's in the name, landlord. It's something that should just
it's
so
not
outdated.
fucking 1457.
We're not in feudalism anymore.
Yeah,
this shouldn't be a thing. But
I'm not your fucking serf.
People have used it as a way to climb the ladder, particularly in a class setting. They've used it as a way to. It's that grind mindset of I want passive income, and that means you have to use other people's labour in order for you to feel comfortable, and that's essentially what landlordism is. You're taking someone else's labour and you're just raking in the money. But yeah, it's getting progressively worse, and it's a real issue because housing is becoming completely and utterly unaffordable.
Yeah,
to the vast majority.
okay. So this place I have right now, it's a private room. It has its own bathroom, and it's kind of like a tiny studio in this little in the house. Like the only thing I really share is the kitchen, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of nice. It's I don't know. It just feels like I have a little tiny apartment.
Yes,
it's dope, but it's $880 and a month. I started out in 2018 paying $400 a month, sharing a room, to having my own room at like $575 the most, to now paying $880.
Yeah.
Within 4 years.
4 years. And this is supposedly like a lot. This is viable long term.
Yeah.
And you see articles of journalists and big publications just writing about, it's just you just have to you have to cost out your month better, or you have to just make a few sacrifices here and there. And I'm like,
don't get so many Starbucks.
If on average housing has gone up by some places has gone up by a quarter fold. Even twofold.
Literally a studio in Pomona I saw, $1,875.
Yeah, in some places that were sort of not even bearable to begin with before, and I think this was always a running theme in the UK. So in the UK, London was always renowned for being utterly broken in terms of housing cost, right? It's a bit like New York, a bit like, here.
How much is it in London?
It can vary.
How much would a one bed, one bath flat be?
You're going into probably thousands of pounds a month for some of these like tiny little apartment rooms.
Thousands?
Like it could be £1,000, probably more now. I'm going back to when I was there, and it was renowned for being broken down when I was a student. And this is going back 10 years ago, 8 years ago. So, but what's happened is that niche little area is suddenly just cascaded across the entire country.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing it here in the United States also, where you always had like these metropolis areas of America, like New York and Los Angeles, and these places, these big condensed areas that were you essentially pricing people out that were originally living there. And
my sister-in-law lived in Brooklyn, and her room had a bathroom. It was a pretty big room. It was probably actually about this size, actually. $1,300.
Yeah.
That was her share of the rent. $1,300.
Yeah.
That's insane.
When minimum wage is still at $7.25 an hour, and this is the same issue in the UK. Minimum wage it has gone up since I was a kid, but it's still only like £9.
It's only £9
an hour, which is about $11 an hour, but that's across the whole country. In London, you have a higher rate of pay because obviously they've known with London it's particularly excessive living expenses.
That's so weird because like it's kind of weird because a lot of the European countries they have pretty high minimum wages. Like I know Switzerland is 19 or 20 like $20 or whatever their money is, I think France is up to the 17, 18 range now. That's shocking, actually.
You gotta remember that the UK went through essentially what America went through with Reaganism. We went through Thatcherism during the 70s,
Oof.
80s.
I saw The Crown, y'all. Oh my gosh. Literally, like, that guy who broke into the Queen's castle or Buckingham Palace and talked to the Queen, and it was because of Thatcher.
Yeah, it's because of Thatcher. Yeah, in fact,
imagine being that pissed.
In fact, to this day,
like I'm gonna go to the bus. Hi. That lady is bad. I'm sorry, but go on.
There is, to this day, you can just look at. I vividly remember as a kid, when Thatcher died, and they tooted out all the. They did like a.
Oh, that was like what 2013?
Yeah, they did a prime minister. They always did a funeral for like a prime minister.
A state funeral.
Sort of like a state, what you call a state funeral. And I remember at the time, there were people who wanted to piss on her grave. Like these are people particularly city of Liverpool, particularly people who came from ex-mining families.
I was in 8th grade when it happened.
Yeah,
and we were talking about U.S. history, and we were probably at the point where we're heading towards the 70s. And I was like, "Who's Margaret Thatcher? And why are they wanting to piss on her grave?"
Yeah.
And my history teacher, I love her. Her name was Mrs. Bartz. She goes, "She was our Reagan."
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you."
Yeah. Yeah, and so everything after Thatcher was essentially like liberalism just revamped itself with Tony. We had the Blairite years, and to make it a more susceptible, more accommodating left. Let's put it that way. It wasn't really left. It was centrist, conservative. The complete encapsulation of what Labour originally stood for, and that's why the UK kind of is the way it is today. Thatcher actually broke the UK in terms. It was willing to break the UK's ability to produce its own goods because she wanted to completely break apart the Union. She wanted to completely.
Oh, the Commonwealth.
She wanted.
Yeah.
Well, not in that sense. She wanted to break unions as a whole in the country.
Oh, I thought you meant like the union of the state.
She was willing to destroy. The mining industry in the UK to get rid of unions, and that's what she did. Because she saw it as the biggest threat. England having unions.
And that was our little snippet on Margaret Thatcher. But back on to Landlords.
Yeah, completely.
Her policies affect housing.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to housing when you have conservative leadership. It sucks. Okay, so ideally what should happen? If a progressive bill were on the table, should it require that the government just deal with the housing issue and
you need
set rent control?
You need real radical change, because the direction that we're going in right now is we're going to end up in a situation where a handful of big companies are going to own a lot of the housing market and effectively monopolize rent. And it's already driving up the cost of just being able to rent a small building. And what it will do, it will also eradicate the idea of home ownership in the long term. You won't own anything and you'll be happy, and that's what they'll tell you. And the reality is, it actually goes completely against the idea of the American dream. At least the American dream, it was you will own a house in a suburban area. That was the American dream, and that's...
Isn't it like a car in every driveway, a chicken in every pot?
Yeah.
Where's my chicken?
And then you won't even get that now. So you're not even getting what they told you, which was a lie initially anyway.
Meanwhile, my friend Aisha is waiting for her, 7 acres and a mule, or...
But I think what we need is communal housing that is cooperative owned, and the government needs to do this in the form of, it needs to build public housing. The UK actually used to have very minimal now, but it did have a very excessive council housing initiative, which was it just built houses and then sold it to people at a completely reduced, nearly a cost rate of what it cost to build the property, and then you would pay. You would never fully own the house, but you would be able to live there until you died, essentially.
So basically, you own the house.
Yeah, it's pretty much like you.
Like, how would you even get kicked out of that house per se? Like, just not be paid.
You do pay like a council house rate, almost like not like a rent, but it's like because you're basically paying for the money you didn't pay for the house. So you paid like a cost rate for the house. So like for example, where I live, there's still council housing areas where I used to live. Properties were very small houses, very cheap.
So it's like similar to Section 8?
Yes, kind of, but a little bit better. A little bit better.
Good.
But it's still not good enough.
Like, it's so funny about the UK. They'll have a social program. It sucks, but it's always better than the American version.
Because, and I say this all the time, I think that what America had not really, but sort of had a working class when you had FDR in office and you brought in Social Security, minimum wage, but it never had like anything beyond that. Whereas the UK in the 50s, particularly after the Second World War, you had the introduction of the NHS, National Healthcare Service. You had a lot more things happen in that span of time that completely changed things long term. Yes, we had the Thatcherite years, but a lot of these things were introduced well before Thatcher got into office. And so, problem is, I think it's sort of the idea of anything going any further in America died the day JFK was assassinated, I think. But
I think so too. Because they wanted him dead.
Conspiracy.
But that's another story. Well, folks, that concludes our discussion. This has been season 1.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Hopefully life gets better to where we can have a season 2 very soon. Definitely before the midterms will start up again. Because that's going to be a fun show. That's going to be a shit show!
We could have done one on student debt again, couldn't we? So much
we will. About. We will. Oh my gosh. But yes, keep stay updated with our social media, which is in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching another episode of Let's Talk with Greg and
Thomas.
See you, folks.